Look at this last implementation of the relationship between students and sections when you might have an enrollment in between. And remember, there were several ways that we could do this, right? We could have students knowing about their sections, sections about knowing about their students, or an intermediate collection in between that knew about both of them, right? So let's first create a couple of schemas for all of these. First, we'll create it for the sections. Right, so let's create a new file in the models where we can create the copy. And in here, we'll create a schema for the sections that already exist. So right now, we just have name. Maybe we can have seats, perhaps. So this might be seats, and this is number. Maybe we can initialize it and say that the minimum is 0 or whatever. I'm not going to do any of that. Plus, we'll create also the model for section. Here we have the DAO, but we'll create the model separately. That's an actual better implementation. So let's see. Let's create here a model for section. So this would be section.model.server.js, and we'll create the model. There it is. Let's copy that. So there we go. So we load the schema. We create the model whose section is section schema, and the section model is the unique identifier. Great. So we have, wait, did we just create two sections? No, okay, no, this is a section schema, and this is a section model. Excellent. All right, so we have the section schema. We have the section model. We can now create perhaps a DAO that allows us to create new sections. So let's do that. Let's create a section DAO on the DAO. So let's see. I didn't. Thank you. So let's do that. So let's do module.exports and section model. Excellent. Thank you. Let's create the DAO here in the DAO. Wait, did it add us? Okay. And the DAO is going to load the model, which we just had earlier. So this is const section model. So this is require, and this is go up one, down to models, down to section model, and then declare an API for this, right? So create section is going to use the section model, and then the .create to create it, and it's going to export this simple API. Okay? Right? And then we can use it to just create new sections. So let's do that in the and on the server. We can do that, right? So we're going to load the DAO, and we're going to create a couple of sections. Let's do that. Although I think we have a couple of sections already. I don't know that we need to create more. But let's just test it to see if it works. So in our server.js, I'm just going to remove my user DAO example. We're going to load the section DAO in a constant. So this, I'm going to change it to constant. And we're going to create a couple of sections. All right? All right, so let's run this. Oops. Cannot find module DAO server. Did I not export it? Did I misspell it? What is it? Oh, okay, so I need to go up one, down to DAO, right? Wait. Oh, no, okay, so DAO/section DAO. I think that's right? Let's try again. All right, so that looks like it worked. If we look at the sections, section.find, we have the two new sections that we just created. So they're there, so it's working. Now that we have section, let's create a schema that will allow us to enroll students in section, right? So let's do that in the enrollment schema. So let's do that, and this is going to allow us to talk about a new topic. right? Let's talk about this, right? So this is creating a brand new schema like we did earlier, right? So Mongoose, create an enrollment schema. All right, so something new here. Something new here. So before, all these attributes that declared a schema, their values were always some primitive data type, right? String, a number, a date, right? This one's a little bit different. Okay? This is saying that the type, notice that the type is not a primitive data type. This is saying that the values of this field is some ID. Right? It's a unique identifier. Right? So all the IDs that we've been using so far, all these IDs, those are the valid values that are going to go in there. Right? So for section, right, the values for section, the value of this field is going to be these values here, these sections right there. See that? Okay? And the values for this student is going to be the values of all these users, right? Of John, of Jane, right? Those students, those IDs. So basically, it's going to be referring. These are being treated like foreign keys, referring to records that live in some other collection, right? Plus, perhaps the other stuff here that we would want here. Perhaps we would want the grade the student got when they were enrolled in this particular section, and that's a number, or maybe the feedback that the student said how wonderful this course was, right? And then the references to the other two records, okay? So typically, if it didn't have these, this would be just a mapping table, right, or mapping collection, right? It would map records from one to another. Because it has these additional fields, we don't refer to this as a mapping relationship. We refer to it as an association, right? It's describing a relationship between two records. Okay. All right, excellent. So let's we have the schema. We'll need a model for this too. So let's create the model real quick. So we'll create here a model. So this is the enrollment.model.server.js. Which is going to load Mongoose. We'll need Mongoose, and we'll need the schema. The enrollment schema will require the enrollment schema, and then we can module exports the new model that we create. So it's going to just be the mongoose.models. And then this will be enrollment and model, and then the schema. There we go. So that's the model. Once we have the model, we can perhaps create a DAO that allows us to create a brand new enrollment. Right? So we can create a DAO for this. We can say create a DAO for the enrollment. So this would be enrollment.dao.server.js that loads that model. So const the enrollment model will require the going up down to the models down to the enrollment model. Once we have the model, we can have functions such as enroll student into section or something like that, right? Where here the arguments might be that you have the student ID that I'm enrolling, and then the section ID into which I am enrolling the student, right? Those will be the two arguments, right? And the implementation would be that we're going to use the enrollment model to create a new object. And the new object takes as argument the student with the student ID, and the section, and I'm going to use the section ID. So that's going to make an insert, right, into that collection, and that referencing the student and referencing the section on who's enrolled where, right? So it's going to return that. So this is going to, let's use ES6. So it's going to return whatever the promise for that is, right? So this now we're going to do module exports, the enrollment, enroll student into section. Yes, right? And so let's do an enrollment. Let's enroll some folks here. So we have these sections. Let's not do that. We don't need to insert more sections. Let's remove that. Let's grab now the enrollment DAO, right? And let's do some enrollments. So let's do const the enrollment DAO. So let's require the DAO and then the enrollments. So now that we have the enrollments, we can enroll a student in a section. So let's do that. So it's enrollment DAO dot enroll student. Oops. Enroll student in section. So let's see, who do we want to enroll? Let's enroll John here. Right? Let's enroll them in the section, section 1 here. Okay. Notice that we currently don't have. Oh, we do. Wait, why do we have enrollments? What? Did we enroll anybody before? Enrollments.find. Oh, we did it by hand, right? We enrolled a particular. Okay, right. Okay, so let's enroll. I don't know who's who here. This student is who? Ends with B04. B04. So it must be. Okay, it was John, right? So let's enroll Jane now. Let's enroll Jane. And the enrollment was in the section AFE. Must have been this one, right? So let's enroll them in 0BD, this last one over here. Okay, so there we go. So let's enroll, and this is going to return then the enrollment objects, and we're just going to do a console log the enrollment to see what the enrollment looks like. Okay? All right, let's run it. Let's see if it blows up. Okay, it blew up. Mongoose model. Oh, I think it's model, not models. Model. Let's try it again. Okay, so this time it didn't blow up. It came back with an object saying that yes, it was inserted, and indeed they're pointing to those two records, and we can make sure that they're there. No. Oh, was it singular? Show collections. Oh, enrollment models. All right, so this is the default name that Mongoose chooses unless you override it, right? It's choosing the name based on user model. I'm sorry, not user model. Where's the enrollment model? Yeah, based on this name that we gave it, right? It chooses it based on that name, which is, it's okay. But I'd rather, specifically tell it that the collection that I want you to use, we can tell exactly what collection we want it to use, and the collection is enrollments. Let's try it again. Let's run that again. So if we do a enrollments, we have the new enrollments, right? That we enrolled now Jane into the other section. Everybody okay? We could also retrieve who's enrolled in what. We can say in the DAO, oops. Oh no, what do I have running? Let me kill a couple of things here. All right. We could ask, right? We can say student enrollments, right? We'd like to be able to say, so if we pass in student ID, I'd like to know in what sections is this student enrolled in, right? So we could say something like enrollment model. We want to find only those enrollments where the student matches the student ID that we pass as an argument. Okay, so let's try that out. If we now in the server, we can say now that we know that we enrolled this particular student, we could do something like, oh, I need to export it, right? Let's export that. So from the server, we can say Enrollment Dao dot student enrollments, and we can pass as argument that particular student, right? And then we can say then, and we say that here are the enrollments, console log the enrollments, right? So if we run this, it'll come back saying that it's that particular enrollment, right? That's the student that matched, and that's a section. Okay, which is all good, all great and good, but this is a little bit. That's a little bit a little bit useless in that if I just have the IDs, I'm going to have to make an additional query, right? If I want to display this, right, the IDs are not going to be enough, right? I'm going to have to do a separate query to show the name of the student, right, and maybe the section name, and how many seats are available, and it'd be expensive to do an additional query. Ideally, it would allow me to do something like a join, right? Meaning, okay, here's the enrollment. You're giving me back the feedback. You're giving me back all this information about the enrollment, but I also want to know what the section name is and the student name and all that, right? But we don't have that in Mongo. But Mongoose gives us something similar to that, right? Mongoose gives us something similar. What Mongoose gives us is a function here that allows us to populate, right? It says, those IDs you have there, right? That you only have the ID of the student, you have the ID of the section. Why don't you use that ID to go actually fetch the record that it refers to? Right, and populate it. Right, fetch me that student. Fetch me that section. So we can say here, populate the section. Populate the section. So use the section value, that ID, to replace it with the actual object that it refers to, and then we do an exec. Okay, so let's try it out. So notice that the section, we don't just have the ID. We have the section name, right? We can. It's kind of like a join, right? It's like say, you have the section over there, you have the enrollment over there, right? But I don't just want the fields in the enrollment. I want you to join it, right, with all the fields that are over there, where the foreign key and primary key match. Retrieve them. It's not really a join. What it's actually doing is that it's actually going back to the database, right, with that ID and doing another find for me, right? And then just giving me this API called populate, which makes it just that easier, right? And you can populate all sorts of fields, even if they're nested. You can go any number of fields that are nested inside of those elements. Okay, excellent.